Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.
And good evening. How is everyone this evening?
Hello.
Doing well.
Hello, chat. We are one short. He is still expected to be here. Um, Apparently, work absolutely refused to let him go. So, says good things about his appeal.
It's nice to be needed.
Of course. So at the moment, we have Adam Gray, known to many, many in the chat, because he is a ghost who gets around. And we have Tom Kane, who has written for, almost everyone at some point in time in the history of gaming. So we're very excited to have you here. You're going to be talking about Ars Magica, but I strongly suspect you might get questions from the chat about some of your other works as well.
Oh, honored to
Um,
be here.
so for chat's purposes, I'm still not feeling terribly well from the COVID, so I went really boring tonight, and we have barbecued chicken pizza. So I don't know what everybody else has, but there is still no pineapple on my pizza.
Correct.
Eraserhead, good to see you. Big Ship, Rachel.
Looks like all the usual suspects are here. Thanks for coming, guys.
Actually, I'm not sure Ultra American TTRPG or has been here before, so I'm very happy to see new people. Uncle Martin stopped in briefly, but had to go and is going to watch the rewatch. Robert's here for the Ars Magica, apparently, so we do in fact have some new faces.
Here's the
Welcome.
Ultra American.
I'm sorry, say again?
The Ultra American has entered the chat.
The Ultra American TTP RPG. Yes. Claiming
Pepperoni
that.
and pineapple
Yeah,
pizza.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Interesting. It always does seem to be something pork related that goes with pineapple, though, and I don't eat pork, so hence I've never quite managed to do the pineapple thing. I like pineapple. I just don't like hot pineapple.
Yeah, I just don't like it on pizza. It makes your pizza soggy.
What I knew on your tombstone. I forgot for a minute that was a commercial. I was like, is this just because I don't like pineapple?
Very threatening early in the show, isn't it?
I know. All right. So since we are out of the order we would normally go in, um, normally Jester would go first, but since he is not here yet, Tom, I think we'll start with you if that's all right. Like I said, I expect you're going to get plenty of questions, so we'll make sure you get a pretty good dose of the time until we run out. Yes, starting things off with a bang.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, got it. There are too many names. Everyone has like different names for every account, and I can only remember one name at a time. I do, in fact, know who Ultra American is. Yes, so if you would tell us about when you started writing for game companies, how you managed to weasel yourself into such an awesome job that we are all extremely jealous of, and a little bit about how you specifically ended up with Ars Magica.
Oh. Starting out was Dragon Magazine. Where I wrote an article for Top Secret on radiation in the world of Top Secret, and that was the first serious writing I'd ever done. I was probably like 16, 16 ballpark, and Dragon Magazine had a wonderful editor at the time, Roger Moore, not to be confused with James Bond. Um, and Roger Moore sort of mentored me and helped me get that article into into shape where it could be published, and and published it, and um, sent me some free merchandise just because he's nice. And with that publication, it I was getting some experience. Was you know getting to be whatever I became, and B, with that publication, it became easier to contact other gaming people and say, hey, I am a published author. Um, I do good stuff. You should hire me. and and I wrote more for Dragon and did work as Sherry said. I've worked with a fair number of game companies over the years, and did what I did. Is that so that's I mean I think the question was how did you get started writing gaming material, and how did you get into Ars Magica? Um, getting jumping forward to the Ars Magica part of the question. Um, it, um, I came into contact with a man named John Nephew, who had a company called Atlas Games, which still exists. And if you are not already familiar with Atlas Games, I strongly recommend it. Atlas Games had a license to produce Ars Magica material, and we're with John Nephew. I started producing Ars Magica material. I picked up through Sherry that some of you are cyberpunk fans as well. And so this is the time to mention that Atlas Games also had a cyberpunk license.
There's a question in the chat for someone who is not familiar with Ars Magica at all. So can you explain a little bit about the system and what it's like? And can you even, you said you can actually find some of the books now still?
Yeah. Again, I don't mean to sound like a paid advertiser here, but if you are looking for Ars Magica material, I would say your first stop is first start. I would advise you to Google Atlas Games and go from there. I I uh, I forget the details of who publishes the Ars Magica rules book and who and but I I I myself was googling these things the other night in preparation for this talk, and I remember that the Atlas Games website has a link for people who want to get the rules, want to get started playing. But you do not have to do that to hear me explain what Ars Magica is. Uh, Basically, I mean uh, do they call a summary a TLDR now? I see that online. I don't know what it means.
Basically, it's for people that are too lazy to read paragraphs.
Okay, that's what it is. Well, I don't want to accuse anyone of being lazy, but a summary of what Ars Magica is: it's a game where you play wizards in in a setting that is supposed to be they work hard at being authentically like medieval Europe. Aside from the fact that magic exists and other mythical legendary things exist too. And the game is based around the theme that everybody is a wizard, and wizards have a sub society with underneath the main one. There's like a wizards organization that you're a part of. No, it's not called Hogwarts, and so that's very high level summary of what Ars Magica is all about. Now, from a game mechanics, rules mechanics point of view, it was innovative when it came out, um, because it was uh, the the people that invented it, who I believe it's another Jonathan, not John Nephew that I've been talking about, but Jonathan Tweet, and I believe Mark Weinhagen, um, were they were interested in a very role playing focused um, approach to gaming. So whereas Dungeons and Dragons um, can be role playing focused, but can also be dungeon crawling, fight the monster, build up a powerful character, sort of halfway to being a war game. Um, Ars Magica was designed to be heavily role playing. It's a theater kids
I would
TTR.
argue that fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons is pretty much all combat based these days.
Again, I what this you can make what you want of this. I've never opened a fifth edition rulebook, so I'll
Me
take your
neither.
word for it.
Yeah.
You're agreeing.
Yeah, no, I haven't looked at any of the recent editions. My son plays quite a bit of it every Sunday. He's got a group, but it sounds incredibly technical to me now, as opposed to what we were doing in the '80s with it.
I have both played and run the newest edition, and there's a reason I don't now.
Gotcha.
I like heavy roleplay. I do not like numbers in combat.
Yeah, to
Well, Ars
certain.
Magica is for people like us then, because I think I would say roughly the same thing. And and when not only did it have that mission to be role playing heavy, the game mechanics are were structured in an attempt to to facilitate that and to make people do it and to take away some things that people that are playing to you know to get a strong character might have enjoyed and replace them with some things that people who don't care so much about personally being the 19th level warrior with plus 5 gauntlets of whatever. The but people that want to create an interesting story might find useful. For instance, um, here is where my memory might be a little fuzzy, but I believe everyone in the group had a wizard that they played. But there was all but here that's the part my memory might be fuzzy on. I'm not sure if the wizards were individualized, one player, one character. But there were a body of other pseudo player characters that were common property. So in D&D, usually, it's one player, one character. In Ars Magica, you as the player, you control your wizard, and then there are 4 or 5 other characters that you can say what they're doing, but then another player can say what they're doing, and anyone in the group can say what they're doing. And everyone took turns being the DM
Nice.
with the same, not different campaigns, but everyone took turns playing the GM in the same campaign.
Right. That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, those are sort of like they called this troop style play, TROUPE, not TRRO, no, not TROOP. In other words, like a troop of performers.
So
And
you didn't end up with somebody who ended up being the forever GM like you do in some areas.
right,
Nice.
yeah. So those are I I mean I think that you asked I mean the the ultimate American asked what Ars Magica was, and I think that I think that sums it up. But I'm happy to take more questions about how it worked or the a big part of it was sort of the feeling they were trying to create, the ambiance and the setting and um, the vibe. And so I can speak more to any of that if anyone's interested.
So the supplements you did, were they adventures? Were they additions?
Adventure. Well, actually, a one-word answer to that would be yes, because they were both. The I did several adventures, and I did. I also did a supplement on it was called South of the Sun, and the theme is everything in Ars Magica is supposed to be based on historical legends and historical, I mean, obviously things that happen. There's magic. There's things that aren't real, but everything is supposed to be tied back to something that people once believed was real. Well, in the Middle Ages, Europeans had very limited contact with sub-Saharan Africa. And in fact, there was a belief at the time that the sun was so hot around the equator that you couldn't sail south of the equator. You'd be burned up.
Wow.
Um, but there was a body of medieval European folklore about what would happen if you went down there. And I mean, if somehow you made it past the equator, um, and and there was supposedly a kingdom in Africa, ruled by a man named Prester John, and I I did some research on the legend of Prester John, and I created you know Africa as envisioned by Africa as envisioned by medieval Europeans, as an Ars Magica supplement. So that was my foray into the supplement side of things. And then also I wrote several adventures which were set north of the equator, um, and one of them was Trial by Fire, um, and in theme of Trial by Fire was it's fairly simple. There is a village. There is a dragon that had a long-standing relationship with this village that the village has broken. The dragon is angry. The dragon is coming. It is the player characters have however long it takes for the dragon to fly there, to organize the village, not to be destroyed. And this is a powerful dragon. So that's the theme of it. It's a dragon fighting adventure, but instead of you going to slay the dragon is coming to slay you. Um,
Is,
and the
is, is just apologizing to the dragon for having screwed him over an option?
Honestly, I would have to reread what I wrote to tell you how realistic that was going to be. But that's a good solution, and that's what both Ars Magica and I personally like to see in games. The the sort of more conventional approach to it is that it was a game. Uh, it was not just about the player characters fighting the dragon. It was about dealing with the entire village under threat.
Yeah.
Tom,
So
what?
that was one of sorry.
No, I'm interrupting. What time period are we talking about when this platform was coming out, and were you working on it full time, or did you have a bunch of irons in the fire all at once as
I
a
mean, he was
writer?
16. I assume he was still in high school.
Well, actually, no, I didn't go to high school,
I was going to say,
but
I mean,
I was 16. I mean, I was older than 16 by the time Ars Magica came out.
Okay.
I had been doing gaming stuff for a while by then. When Ars Magica, I believe, I'd have to look this up to say it for sure. I believe Ars Magica was first published in 1987,
Okay.
and I would have to look this up as well. But I think I got into it more sort of around 1991.
Okay. Yeah, I just
Again,
want
I'd have to check those dates.
yeah, I just want to give the chat a sort of a sense if they're not old hardcore gamers, when in history this is all happening. So thank you.
old. I think you just want to, for those for those who aren't old like the rest of us.
Yeah,
Um, Amelia had some questions in the comment. She asked if there were age restrictions on the game. Is it a fairly family-friendly game? Is it more for like? I mean, I run some games that are really adult only, thick-skinned adults at that. But I actually never played Ars Magica, so I'm not terribly familiar with the answer to that question.
It's a great question, especially when you consider some of the games. I mean, I know I know the kind of games you're talking about. I know what you're talking about here. And ours, I mean, quick answer. Ours Magica is family friendly. I mean, it's sort of a longer and more complicated rule book. So I can see that, you know, like a you know, a, so I mean, it takes a little maturity just to like have the patience for it. But I I I I don't remember anything, seriously adult in the in, in the rules in the material. Now here someone will like dig out something, on like the footnote of a footnote of page 35 where there is something really adult. That I can't swear that there's nothing, you know
I mean, I know with
gory or
most role
sexual in it, but that was not the theme of the game. It was, and I am pretty confident. I'm pretty confident that there is not something on page 35.
yeah. And I mean, most role-playing games, how adult the game is very dependent on the game master and the players.
Yes, and I think that is,
Um, unless you're running something like Cult, which specifically says on the front page, this is not intended for children.
yeah, cult is not intended for children, and Ars Magica, I think, as you say, it's entirely up to the group playing it how adult they want to make it.
She also asked if it was an expensive hobby. Amelia, can you clarify? Do you mean role-playing in general, or do you mean specifically Ars Magica? Because I think the answer is going to vary depending on
I think she's
which you were
asking
asking.
generally, but yeah, it's.
Because I mean, there are free role-playing games, and there are some that are terribly expensive. So,
Mm, I remember
Oh,
when we used to get the Steve Jackson $5 games. Uh, you could pick it up for $5, and you only needed one six-sided die, and you could, fill a weekend with that. So
we have Amelia's answer has come through the wire, and yeah, it is. It is. Well, at least I mean, you could play it online like we're doing now, but back in the day there was no online, and
I was gonna,
and
yeah, that was gonna be my next thing was the fact that now
yeah,
everybody plays online, but before there was no option for that.
just a
yeah,
big sticky table.
and sorry,
Go ahead, I'm done.
and that's answer the question. Um, Buying physical media, I would say. I mean, a I forget exactly what the Ars Magical rulebook cost, but I would say that it would have been like around $15. Now, of course, the caveat is $15 was worth more then, but even still, um, you know, it was money that you could get the basic rulebook for money that most people were willing to spend, and dice could be a few dollars extra. Of course, the next thing is almost everybody who gets into gaming buys a lot of stuff that they don't really need, but they want. As I say, you can get dice for a few dollars, but if you want like a big bag that you can clump down on the table with all the really cool ones in it, you will spend up ending. You will spend up ending. You will end up spending um, more money. But gaming can be and could be, um, you know, pretty budget friendly. And you asked about the meetups. Um, I mean, again, it depends on how far you have to travel to meet up.
Yeah, and it's gonna depend too on what you're, because I mean, most places will have a Dungeons and Dragons group, but Dungeons and Dragons is not for everyone these days, especially for those of us that don't like numbers and and heavy combat. Um, Foundry has gotten better for. I used to hate running online, but Foundry has actually gotten really good. It's become quite easy.
That is
Um,
good to hear. I also have had, um, well, online in person is still better, and
oh, absolutely.
maybe Foundry is reducing the gap there, but in person is
It
still better.
also depends on the game too. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a couple of quite simple games that. So somebody mentioned Car Wars, and that got me wondering. I know you did a lot of GURPS books. Did you ever write for Steve Jackson for anything else? I
Actually,
can't
no.
remember.
I would love to say, oh yes, Car Wars 2, but I never did Car Wars. And whether I don't think I did any I don't think I did any non-GURP Steve Jackson.
But you did what, 4 books for GURPS? Am I remembering correctly? Egypt,
Your
China,
memory is as good as mine here. I mean, there was
Egypt,
Egypt.
China, espionage, and I feel like there was one other, but I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I'm gonna back up just another second for the chat's benefit again. If you're not familiar with GURPS, it was a pretty revolutionary system that came out at the time, and the acronym is Generic Universal Role Playing System. So you were unlocked from being stuck in a dungeon fighting orcs, that the way it had been for years, and suddenly you had a whole new worlds of options for your game scenarios.
I see someone saying they have GURPS China, and I am honored. I hope you like it.
I mean, one has to assume they wouldn't have kept it if they didn't. Nope, we are back to the pineapple. Pineapple, bacon, and ham.
No, no, and no. No.
Um, and Comics Dad, welcome. Good to see you. Somebody is saying that Roll20 is also working well for them playing with people in the UK.
And
Adding custom content can get crunchy. Yeah, that tends to be the case.
I see JAWD's reply, and thank you. I'm honored.
And we have more new faces. Welcome, Stunt. Good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Please hit the like button so we can get the stream out to everyone. Much appreciated.
I mean, I'd also be really thrilled if people subscribed, but that's totally secondary.
We're
was
very
really hoping
needy today.
I was really hoping to hit 340 by the end of the month, and I've got 2 days left to do it. So,
We can do it.
oh, Rachel says pineapple people have to stick together.
Oh, Rachel, no, how could you?
So we have kind of a don't just hit the like, critically smash it.
Nice.
Rolling your crits. So I actually went and looked up a little bit because I think she's already disappeared, but I want to share my screen here if I can remember how to do this. All right, here we go. So this is the Atlas Games site. This is the Ars Magica, and apparently they are just putting out a new edition. I don't know if this out of stock is because it hasn't actually come out yet, or how
Coming
that
this
works. This
summer.
seems to.
Which
I'm
summer? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Say again, Adam.
At the top of the page, I see it says coming this summer. I don't know which summer they're referring to.
I know, but I don't know if they've like already pre-sold out of their
Yeah.
pre-sales or.
I don't know.
But apparently they did 840,000 in crowdfunding, so apparently it's still quite popular.
Wow, it's a beautiful set as well.
Yeah, I know. I was
Yeah.
looking at that. I was like, I kind of want to just because the books are pretty. And then they're gonna have this standard edition, which apparently will be softcover. And that looks vastly less expensive. So hardcover's $35, paperback is basically. I wonder why there's a time difference between the two.
I don't know, but that is pretty reasonable.
Yep, and then the digital is $20. So there's a softcover UK printing. Interesting. Wish I could blow some of these pictures up. It would be really nice to see some of this art. I'm very big on art in my games these days.
It's come a long way since the advanced D&D.
I think I mentioned last week I literally own books I will probably never use just because I really liked the art.
Oh, sure. We all do.
Oh, and Ars Magica has their own dice now. Though I'm guessing it's still just a 10-sided die with fancy print on it.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good looking die.
So, that answers a question as to anyone that's looking at buying the newest edition. Um, black olives, mushrooms, and tomatoes. I think I might prefer the pineapple. I really have an issue with mushrooms.
Oh, man, I'm getting ganged up on here. I'll have a slice of Barbara's.
um, I've lost my train of thought.
Are
I've always thought
but
true play sounded fun, but my gaming group has trouble wrapping their head around the concept when I've described it to them. Do you have any tips for introducing gamers to the concept? That's a great question.
That is a really great question, actually.
Tom,
yeah.
you're the only one that's done familiar with the concept. Oops.
Well, I'm trying to think of an easy in. I mean, I guess I guess I should say that I, I have I've never encountered that as a problem. So I don't have like a here are the steps you follow solution. I would I mean I guess I would just you know sort of explain try to explain it. Ask questions, find out what the points of confusion are, and try to explain it. I mean, can you say more about what the points of confusion are?
Yeah, I think that was going to be my question too. Is what about it were they having trouble wrapping their head around?
You mentioned the term theater kids early, and it's not always such a, a flattering term, but yeah, I think that there's probably a lot of people that just are lost if there's not going to be a rigid set of rules that they're expected to walk through. Um, it, Improv theater, is that close?
I think so. And by the way, I sincerely hope that didn't come across as derogatory.
Oh no, I
Um,
don't mean to.
I
I
mean,
don't mean to understate it.
I
No,
apologize if it did.
no, but a lot of people do use that as a less than flattering term. But yeah, I don't. I'm trying to figure out how I would explain it to someone. Also, hmm, make believe, I guess.
Yeah, I mean here I guess here's why we need we need a response from the person who asked the question. Um, I guess the first thing is, do they play other role playing games and it's just troop style games that they are having trouble with, or have they never role played at all?
Well, we should probably give the poor guy a few minutes to
To
actually type
answer.
his question out because it's probably a fairly long answer, and then he has to deal with the fact that YouTube will only allow him to use so many characters. So
Yeah, we're on a slight delay as well for the audience.
yeah, that's true. Um,
Yeah, I've noticed that I've noticed the delay.
Yeah, it's usually about 5 or 10 seconds.
um, I think there is an issue too, and this is one of the things that I don't like about the current edition of D&D is that the rules are very kind of boxed in. And I have noticed that when I try and do something like the first time I ever ran Shadow of the Demon Lord, Tom, I think you were actually there. Um, everybody got really confused because I gave everybody a problem, but there was no solution. Like there wasn't a specific thing they were supposed to like figure out. Instead, they were just supposed to it wasn't like a video game. There wasn't like one set path forward. Um, and they were so used to D&D where there is one or maybe two sets paths forward that everyone kind of got lost until I said no, this is not there is not a right answer. This is just a do it answer. And then they were like, oh, and things went much smoother.
Yeah, it can be difficult to get people out of the mind frame of just puzzle solving and and finding that correct code or whatever it is that they need to do. That's
Well,
why I
and
like the Numenaria, actually.
I think that I think that's a lot of the video game culture, that there is, there tends to be a way through. I mean, 4th edition D&D was basically trying to be uh World of Warcraft,
I think we got our
except
clarification from Stunt Gonzo.
here we go. And hello to Yarny.
Hey, Yarny.
They mostly play D&D. They seem to have trouble with the idea of switching between different characters instead of focusing on one at a time. The only one in the group who kind of gets it is also a DM. Which would make sense because DMs have to roll between different characters all the time.
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, I see. I don't know if this would work or not, but a way to explain it is that everybody shares in the DMing.
Would it be a good way for people to learn how to DM? Could you sell it that way as, this is a way for you to dip your toes into DMing without having to take the full responsibility on
Well,
yourself?
that would be accurate.
How do you know when to change DMs? How do you keep somebody from just kind of hogging the table or not wanting to do it at all?
Well, I do not think that. I mean, again, maybe someone can refresh my memory about this. I don't think the rules addressed that. I think the idea was that you would just work that out among friends. You would say, "Hey, it's my turn now," or "Hey, hey, it's your turn now." And if if you, I mean, I think this is probably an area where you know where you ideally, if you're good enough friends, everyone will cooperate. But maybe you could have some conflicts coming out of that.
Well, I mean, one of the things that is great about roleplay is that it really does do a good job, especially for younger people. It does a great job of teaching conflict resolution.
Social skills, as like we said.
We use it a lot. Hello, I'm sorry I'm late, by the way, but we use
Yeah,
a lot
welcome.
with
Glad
our
you made it.
events. I'll tell you what, man, I had spent so much time setting up all the camera and the head. I had a nice microphone, as you know. We have a whole studio, and yeah, the software didn't want to use any of it today. So I am Jester Boris, game master and storyteller with I Want to Be a GM. And we, like I said, we do a lot of work with libraries, actually. We've seen that kids really appreciate the outlet to be able to have a sort of a framework to do conflict resolution. Not everything needs to be killed. Really have a safe space to sort of imagine being the hero. I know we've dealt a lot with kids that end up being bullied quite often, and so it's nice for them to be the hero sometimes.
Yeah.
Rio, welcome. Yarnwich did make the point, I brought this up already, but I'm going to bring it back up, that it allows all players to understand the pains of GMing. So, sorry, Jester, since you weren't here, we were talking about, I'm sorry, what's the term again, Tom?
Troop style play.
Where,
What?
yeah.
Troop
What's
with a U.
Troop. Yes, okay.
Somebody had asked how he could convince his gaming group to try it because they couldn't quite get their head around it. So
I've been the forever GM, in particular as we continue to teach. I find myself in that role more and more. I actually haven't had the opportunity to run my own game in quite a while, with the things that we have going on from our side of stuff. So, definitely trying to get to that shared story aspect, multiple game masters. It can be a little tricky, especially if you end up with a lot of new players. We see a lot of people that aren't familiar with what that role is, and there's a lot of trepidation as to take the role behind the screen. So a troop style or a shared style of running the game and switching characters and stuff can definitely make a difference.
Yeah, I was saying that I thought it might be a really good way for people that were interested in GMing but didn't want the full responsibility to kind of dip their toes in a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of interesting is finding not one shots, but you pare it down even further into just encounters. And an encounter can be anything from, hey, look, we're being waylaid by bandits, to I have to convince the bartender that he really should give me my meal for free because I'm broke. And so, between social role play and full combat, giving just an encounter to be responsible for, I think, can take a lot of the weight off of people's shoulders. If you're trying to, use that as a method to ease somebody in if they're got questions about getting onto that side of the screen.
Tom, somebody asked if you ever wrote for White Wolf.
I certainly wrote for White Wolf magazine. Um, I did not. I did not write for the World of Darkness.
Hmm.
I had forgotten there was a White Wolf magazine.
There was.
Did you write like about the World of Darkness, or were you writing other game systems in? I don't think I ever read the magazine, so.
The original White Wolf was quite so. Well, I was about to say quite similar to Dragon, but I take that back. It was different from Dragon because Dragon was very TSR focused, and White Wolf was anything focused. But it was role playing in general, and I wrote. I don't remember every article I wrote for them. Um, I did publish a short story there, but uh, and the and I think I wrote for several systems there, and the World of Darkness did not even exist at that point.
Did you write for TSR other than in Dragon magazine? I don't remember.
Yeah, I wrote. I have bits and pieces in a number of TSR publications. In
I'm sorry, I missed part of that. Could you say it again?
the answer to your question is yes. There are. I'm in. I forget how many, but I have parts. I have like chapters and scenarios and that and those sorts of things in a number of TSR. I don't know if I should say books, but soft cover, basically books. So and I also I could be. You can check this and be sure. I may be wrong about this. I think I am credited in the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide. Although, to be full truth in advertising, if I am, it's something. It's something that I wrote something else, and they copied it over into the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide. So that if that's even true, that would be how that happened.
You want me to grab my book, Tom? It's right over there.
As everybody starts pulling out the books they have that
Fact checking was
Tom wrote.
done. Yeah.
Um, if you had to guess, how many game books are you credited in, or did you write?
Oh, I would say sort of mid mid double digits.
Wow. That's a
I,
lot.
That was like math. Like what? um, do you remember what the last thing was you wrote?
the last game type thing.
Yeah.
That,
I mean,
that actually,
I know what the last thing you wrote, but we'll get to that.
yeah. That's actually that's a little challenging. It might have been GURPS Egypt. Um, I am guessing it was GURPS Egypt.
I always think of China as having come out after Egypt. I think it's just because I saw it after Egypt, but in my brain it always sticks as that, and the fact that the copies of GURPS Egypt I've always seen are like far more well, shall we say, well loved than the GURPS China, so it always looks older.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I am pretty confident that that I wrote China first. Also, just to did I have a favorite GURPS book I wrote? Yeah, this is it would have to be China. I mean, obviously, well, I like all the books I wrote because if I didn't, I would have written them differently. But I would say that the China book is something that I've the China book has been a foundation stone in my life in
I
a
was going to
way
say,
that
didn't you
the
then
others.
go on to write a bunch of nonfiction China stuff?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I have been I've been interested I've been interested in China in a way that I have, well, I mean, no shade to Egypt. They did some good pyramids, but I have done a lot more research into China than the other topics. I've done a fair amount of research into espionage too, but that sort of takes us in a different direction. Um, and as you say, in my academic career, I did nonfiction work on China, and I think and that has been good. Um, it's been real. It's been good. And so the answer to the question would be China.
Have you actually been to China? I think that'd be an awesome follow up after you've done so much research.
Yeah, I have. I cannot say I've traveled extensively in China, but I have been there.
Oh, fantastic.
I went there. I went there in the middle of a pandemic. Not it
Oh,
is no longer the pandemic, but it seemed like a pandemic at the time. And China was taking that one very seriously too. And there was, before I was going, there were things in the news about they would when an airplane would land in China, the Chinese authorities would come on board with temperature guns, and they would check everyone's if anyone on the plane had a fever, everyone on the plane would be taken to quarantine facilities. And I did not like the sound of that, but by the time I got there, they had stopped doing that, and so it was no problem. My only contact with the crisis was that there were still signs up about it in the airport.
I was going to ask if you got quarantined. I never heard that story.
This was the swine flu in
I assumed that had to be what you were referencing, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
heard about the trip to Russia. I never heard about the trip to China.
The trip to Russia, the trip to Russia was fun too.
This is what the benefits of academia are for everybody. Sometimes
yeah.
you get to go to cool places.
Yeah, no kidding.
Any other questions in the chat for Tom? We may have some that pop up when we hit Cyberpunk, but
Tom,
I think everybody's busy saying hi to problematic white guy. So
well, I just wanted to ask here, Tom, did you work primarily in like the third edition and earlier GURPS material, or have you kind of worked with the material off and on throughout its iterations?
I think that second was was my heyday.
Mm-hmm.
This is another
I just
case.
have a lot of. Oh, go ahead. I apologize.
This is another case which I might have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that. Well, I was writing most of my gaming writing was sort of mid '80s to early '90s,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was still second edition.
that's all right. I was trying to think of Shadowrun the other day for second edition, and
Yes.
then got really confused because third edition apparently was out when we were playing mostly second edition, and so I got really confused. I was thinking that I got my times all confused. I was like, "Is my memory just bad? Did we play third? No, I'm sure we played second."
We played second, and actually, the truth is, I play second today.
Oh yeah, I have it downstairs in the game room right now. I got this, what is it, sixth edition that's that they're on now, and read through it and went, "No, I'm good. I'm just gonna stick with second."
The issues with Shadowrun later editions and D&D later editions are different, but like D&D, Shadowrun it's almost a different game.
Yeah, and it's Cult ran into that too. I mean, I love the early editions of Cult, and the later editions are so much shallower. I mean, it's easier to make a character, but the character has a lot less depth than the earlier editions, and so you end up with less roleplay. So,
which is disappointing.
but all right. Well, if other people have questions, please throw them in the chat as you get them. In the meantime, let's move on to Jester and give Tom a little bit of a break here.
But we all love Tom.
We do.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, for those of you who probably don't know me, again, Jester Boris. I'm one of the game masters over at I Want to Be a GM. We do a lot of GM training, and we run a once monthly podcast. Our last year's series was a pretty cool one. We did Through the Multiverse, as we showed off and showcased different game systems people could check out if they were kind of weren't connecting with D&D anymore, things like that. So
Which is how I
GURPS.
found them.
GURPS was that was our end of the year show. We were just sitting there, basically just talking. So Troy is the other game master that you'll see, and then our Mr. Producer is the disembodied voice off the camera. But yeah, we cover a lot of game systems. We covered GURPS. We played GURPS. That's how I found Cyberpunk back in the day. So as a game master, I've been doing that for almost 20 years. My primary games are Cyberpunk Red, Star Wars. I play Saga Edition, and then I can't believe I blanked on it, but mostly it's all sci-fi. I like a lot of the sci-fi. The dark. Oh, well, I'll do V5 Vampire. Um, so that was pretty cool. Got to kill some people with Krampus for our holiday special. They were bad anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal. But one of the things I came on to showcase, which is kind of fun, is this particular game system that was written by some people that are kind of local to me, actually, and that is Rune and Steel. This originally was a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons modification that after they had worked on it for a couple years, we're like, okay, we can just drop all the D&D stuff, and then they restructured everything from the ground up. Some of the combats were based heavily on HEMA. There's a lot of true history, culture, and things of that nature that go into this. I got the box over here next to me. It's kind of interesting from a skills system standpoint, in that it's classless but not levelless, and then your skills are dice based, and so you could have a D6 all the way up to a D12 in a skill. And then it's a dice pool to meet a challenge rating number. So a little bit more complicated than you would see in the dice, but not too difficult to pick up. And I think the biggest draw has got to be its big historical focus. There's so much true history that underpins a lot of the fantasy. This is a very low fantasy sort of game that I think really brings out its appeal. So let me grab this book here for you. It comes in a box.
Can I just ask real quick what
Yep.
you said? There's a lot of historical appeal. Is it European? Is it just worldwide in general?
Scandinavian and Norwegian Vikings. So.
Oh yeah, Rune and Steel. I should have been able to figure that
out. So let me pull up my notes here.
You're getting a lot of compliments on the cover art.
So that cover art, and so I closed the window that had my other notes. I'll pull that up in a moment. That art was commissioned by a gentleman in Czechoslovakia. So it's a professional artist that did this material back in 2021. They ran through and had a Kickstarter, so they managed to raise almost double their goal and get a lot of those printed. And
Nice.
then we found them at a local convention because we play a lot of the local stuff, local game stores, local cons. But okay, I see here I'm the big one. So just as a quick note here, it's a skill dice versus difficulty, or a skill die versus skill die. So you actually have an active defense component. If you were to be attacked, you don't have to just stand there and get hit. One of the critiques of the system is that it can allow you to go into the weeds quite quickly. A lot of times game designers have to balance the approximation of your character being able to complete some task that they're skilled in, versus trying to detail it out. And so this strikes a pretty good middle ground, but leans a little bit towards the detail side. But that just provides for more character customization, so that you don't, yes, we all are all Vikings and we all have similar cultural backgrounds and this sort of thing. No two characters are the same at the table, and I appreciate that from somebody who's played RPGs for quite a long time. I prefer that sort of diversity and uniqueness in a character. But here, so characters have a skill such as combat, and the more skilled a character is at combat, the more dice that they'll have. And you'll range from 1 die as a novice up to 10 dice as a grand master of a skill. And so typically a skilled combatant will be somewhere in the 6 dice. And then, so number of dice, and then based on other factors, you'll go from anywhere, like I said, a D6 up to a D12 in your dice pool. And not unlike other dice pool systems, you've got a target number, and you're trying to get a number of successes above that, like so equal to that or higher. Trying to.
Is it really? Is it number crunchy like some of those can be?
Later on, it ends up being a little bit, because you'll. Let me pull this character sheet here. It gives you an idea. So the character sheet ends up being, I've got this printed front face, 4 pages, or 2 pages front and back.
That's a hefty character sheet.
Yeah. And then you'll start to see here, as I bring this up to the camera, we get into some of the skill, and let's see if my camera will focus for me today. A little bit. So you've got the skills, and this is a pre-generated character, so you'll see combat at a rank 3 with proficiencies, different proficiency die here. This one's marked for, if I can get in there. Yep, there it is. Marked for a D10. And then you've got bonuses and defenses, and so it can be quite a lot to track, and it becomes a little bit more cumbersome than even like 3rd edition D&D was, with so many bonuses and what's it? Helping this guy, and I've got smoke in my eyes, and we're in combat. So it could be a little convoluted there, and this definitely does allow for itself to get dice heavy or numbers crunchy as it goes. But there's a lot here, like I said. So we're combat, prowess, athletics, woodcraft, beast mastery, labor, artisanal crafts. So we're talking like brewing would be one of those things. Influence, academia, fine arts, lore, medic. Oh, that is a Scandinavian word I can't pronounce. Rune mastery, and then tactics, resolve, subterfuge. So they've got quite a decent representation across the kind of skills that you would expect in a low fantasy role-playing game, so that you can build that character that you're after. Aside from selecting your skills, the way that you build out your proficiencies is how you would begin to customize and differentiate your character.
Is this another one of those games where you have to like force somebody to play the medic because nobody wants to?
Medic is a little different in this one. So they go so far as to have an interesting mechanic for when you die. I'd have to look it up again as far as what it was called in the cultural lore, but your spirit remains. So though your character dies, for the remainder of the session, your spirit is there, and you have things that you can do to interact with the world around your party, give hints or tips and things of that nature.
That's
It
really
is a little limited because you're dead, but it's a way to kind of, you don't have to immediately roll a character. It plays into the lore and the culture, and it lets a character who may have died in combat, lets that player remain at the table, stay connected to the game, and continue to be, helpful, at least for the remainder of the session, and you would want to get them a new character.
I think that's really great. It could be
Yeah,
really
it's
deflating to lose your character at the beginning of a session and just sort of wander around. Yeah.
well, if you guys ever played the Red Box D&D days, when you're a wizard and you have 1d4 of HP and you rolled a 2, and you're going into the basement to clear out the rats for the barkeep, and the the rat kills you, you were dead, and that was it. So,
I
back in the
mean,
red box day, you didn't sit down unless you had 3 or 4 characters rolled up because you were going to go through them.
yeah, as I recall, it was something like wizards had a 50% chance of being able to be one-shotted by a house cat
Pretty much.
because
It's so
a house
bad
cat
that
they could only have like 1d4 hit points, and a cat could do like 1d4 damage or something like that.
it was the
So
lowest die that they considered a D2, and things weren't really brought in till sort of later concepts. Um, the cleric at level 1 in those days did not have any spells. You didn't get your first spell as a cleric until level 2. So you had to live long enough for your god to bless you. It was pretty brutal. And so it's nice to be able to have some combat, particularly with its draws on their HEMA training and that sort of stuff. You get a realistic sort of combat, which means that it can be deadly sometimes. And so if your character does happen to fall, you've got a way to be able to continue to contribute. You don't have to leave the table. You don't have to sit there. You don't have to like awkwardly roll up a character and then be introduced somewhere halfway through a dungeon or something. Um, which is kind of what you're left with in a lot of other game systems. So it's nice to have that sort of mechanic um, in the game system that is also meets with the lore. So I was appreciative of that one.
yeah, a lot of these early role-playing games very much had the Gen X, sink or swim kind of attitude. Like, we died a
Well,
lot.
yeah, it's with everything coming out of war games, like in the chainmail rules, you may remember Fireball said everything in this 6-inch circle is destroyed. Not like takes damage, not as like unavailable. It's just destroyed. And that was kind of what you were dealing with. So you're like, yeah, I can cast Fireball. It's going to kill everything, including myself, probably. And that's just how we did it.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, Paranoia, I don't know, I haven't seen the latest editions, but Paranoia was one of the only games ever created where you could die during character generation.
I remember that some of the life path games. You're like, all right, everything's going right. You're like, why I did? Okay, now I have no leg. You're like, this is a terrible roll. Can I re-roll? No. Okay. um, show off a little bit here again though with the system, um, where you get some different interesting things that you can do. Move that over. Sorry. So light hunting bow has durability, 3 per duration, no might requirement. We got different special effects there. Damage, and then same thing here where we're looking at perception and initiative, where you've got those skills at a certain level plus your proficiencies, which increase your dice, right? So our initiative would be 3d8, and the perception over there is 5d10. So that's where you get your dice pool and your perception, or not your perception, sorry, your proficiencies begin to make a difference in how easy it is for you to hit those target numbers.
So it sounds like maybe not a great game for beginners, but good for people that are looking to roll into something else.
For sure. So let me bring this up here. I talk about it like because the development came out of people who have been playing role playing games for a long time, and it was sort of one of those things that came out of their home game.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it definitely has the spice and edge that they really liked. If I could find their About Us.
Silence.
It's I apologize.
That's all right.
Here we go. Again, I had to restart my computer. I had it all pulled up. I was ready to go. I promise. So, it's described as a next generation tabletop RPG set in the Viking Age continent of Nordur. Combat, crafting, diplomacy, magic, character creation, unique monsters, and more are offered in the core rulebook. Runen still has risk versus reward and easy to play but hard to master philosophies at its core. Every system is included to heighten tension and immersion while providing clear rulings for the game master. And that is one of those things that kind of goes back and forth. It's a 400 plus page book.
Yeah, it looks kind of dense. That's why I wondered whether or not it was maybe a better later player.
For sure. And so those clear rulings are great if you're familiar with the rules, and that's where it creates your learning curve. And that's where I think D20 games like D&D have stayed popular. It's a pretty straightforward, I roll this die, I may or may not add a number to it, and then you tell me what happens. That's one of the, you can sit anybody down and sort of walk them through the game at that pace. But here I'm like, okay, I sit down. What kind of die do I need to roll? How many of them do I roll? What does that mean? Why does it mean that? What do you mean I died? Like, so it's got a bit of a learning curve, to be sure, but it also, on the flip side of that, really brings forth that immersion. So you can get into the weeds on like sword technique versus my shield and how my spears work and what combat does, archers versus footmen and all this sort of stuff. They've got a system for rune crafting. So magic is, like I said, low fantasy, but you get rune crafting. There are like storytellers and their shamanistic sort of applications in here as well. So they do a good job of covering a lot of lore. They bring out some things from the Poetic Eddas and different stories of the age. But again, because they account for so much, it can really kind of add some complexity, particularly when you get into everything here. Just as an example, defensive abilities: block and punch, counter, deflect, gain measure, master strike defense, redirect, riposte, ready to action. And then there's special combat rules for GM. So like this is just defense. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Very crunchy. I'm used to there being like 2 paragraphs for defense, if at all.
Yeah, like you have armor, it makes you not die. Wear stronger armor, die less. And again, this is what I mentioned earlier, where game designers try to strike that balance between how detailed do we want to be versus how do we approximate this action to make it fun, right? And I think, again, this one leans a little bit more towards the detail. So it can be a lot of fun. There's a lot of people who really enjoy that number crunchy, the min-maxing, and that sort of stuff. The role play, it's got everything that you could ask for to jump into a Viking Age character. They've got a lot of creatures from mythology, giants, of course. A lot of their gods and spirits are some of the things that you can interact with, or you'll find that guide or interfere with some of the things that you're trying to accomplish as you go out. And so, in that regard, there's a lot to offer.
You have a question in the chat. Somebody wanted to know how historical versus magical/mythical the setting was.
Well, being low fantasy, you're obviously going to be history inspired, not history direct. I've managed to lose the tab. Haha. So, they have goblins and things of that nature more as they're described in the European lore, the original sort of goblin, than what we see from the Tolkien and forward into D&D sort of descriptions of goblins. Again, magic is more low-key, shamanistic, or runic. You're not going to be out there casting lightning bolt. You're not going to be out there seeing necessarily even Thor and Loki battling, but you may come across a direwolf or something of that nature on the trail that is connected to Fenrir and Fafnir in the Ragnarok. So, it does strike that really good historical tone while remaining a work of fiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff, we're not totally certain where the mythical ended and the historical started on some of those things anyway, so.
Yeah, and a lot of the surviving works are like Beowulf, for example. I think there's 3 or 4 really old copies of it, and there's a lot of people that have written entire PhDs around, reconstructing the story from this period versus that period, and dissecting the differences and the similarities. So you do have to take it a little bit with a grain of salt, but the spirit is definitely there. Um, if you were a fan of the Viking show, or the spoof show Norseman, if you guys aren't familiar with that, there's one for you for later. Um, you can definitely grab that and go straight into that world with this setting. One of the things also, it's a great resource if you wanted to create a Viking or similar character for any of your other game systems. So there's a lot of underpinning and things that you can find there that you won't find in many other source books.
Anybody have any other questions? Interesting. Oh, I actually did have one other question.
Hmm.
So I know that
There it is.
a lot of those books these days, like Wizards of the Coast puts out 3 different books in order to play the game. Is that a you only need that one book in order to play? Are there supplements or?
No, so finally found it. This was Ryan, who was the father, and Kale, who was the son, the father and son team. They did not like the multiple books, so they endeavored to write one book, which is part of why it's so large. But it is, once you buy it, you've got it and you're good. They do have an active Discord. They are working on some updates. They wanted to expand Magic, particularly in the realm of like magic items and some of the lore and things that are around the magic and mysticism and spirit side of that culture. So there's further developments in the works, but it's been slow going, as you might imagine, from a two-man team. But it's still got a following. It's building up, and if you get the core book, which I believe is still available through their Kickstarter, then you would be able to also keep an eye out for any further supplements. They have written a couple standalone adventures and a quick start guide, so you would be able to have some resources available. They've also got some pre-generated characters to help you go ahead and jump in and give it a shot.
Did we get a link in the chat for the?
Yeah, Racerhead found the
Oh, yes,
Kickstarter
there.
page. Yep.
Well, I saw your I want to be a GM link pop up. I did not see the other one. How much does it
Oh,
cost
that.
for
Yeah.
the original source book?
I would have to, let's see here. I've
Since
got to
somebody asked
find.
earlier about how expensive it was to get into the.
Well, so because we bought the big box when we saw it, and they don't have anything listed here. I believe it was 60, so it's a little. It's in the realm of, but a little bit more than many of your other like D&D or Paizo or other kind of publications.
Well,
Um,
but D&D charges $50 a book for the 3 books you have to have in order to.
yep. Hmm.
There we go. Thank you, Eraserhead.
Yep. So where we have I saw somebody was talking about the GURPS books, because I will second that. I use the monkey out of those for everything. Um, we've One of the things that was great. You may or may not have seen this, Tom, when Planescape came out, and that completely changed the way Dungeons and Dragons was understood. We had to bring new magic into the game to mess with the players who had been playing forever. They knew the entire book back and forth, and they were de facto rule lawyers because they'd read it every day for a million years. So suddenly they start messing them up with spells from GURPS Magic 1 and 2. You find some of the cyberpunk stuff, and you reflavor a cybernetic device into a magic device or something like that. Um, yeah, so even if you guys don't have a group that is out there playing GURPS, if you can find those source books, they're going to open up so many resources and ideas that you can bring into any setting because of how well written they are. Um, it's really a resource you'll want on your shelf.
Yeah, there's a massive GURPS Discord too, and they have everything from like, your first GURPS game and like how to deal with stuff to people who want to nitpick every rule from every book in every edition and debate debate how they work together. So, somebody asked Jester, do you know if they have any plans on making an Asian culture supplement? Which I'm not sure I understand the question. Oh, as an extra game or world expansion.
They don't have any plans for anything outside of Norway, Scandinavia, and the Viking culture or heritage right now. So that that's their kind of focus. That's where their sort of hobby is at. Um, and that's really all I got on that one. I was trying to think about some of the other Asian cultures and games and supplements that are out there. Of course, the those have been hit or miss. It depends on which ones you want to reference at the time. China, I think, out of GURPS, with Tom's work, has been probably one of the more complete ones. And some of the older D&D Oriental Adventures will give you some ideas, but um,
That
they
are
were more
now considered
stereotypical.
very politically incorrect these days.
Well, yeah, they're very stereotypical kind of works from the older D&D Oriental Adventures and some of the stuff there.
It was a different time.
Yeah, so you just have to recognize what the material is, so that you can apply it appropriately as you go forward in your games.
It is interesting that I I mean, like I don't remember ever seeing a source book in any game for, let's say, India.
No, which is crazy because they're one of the oldest, largest cultures with so much history. I mean, all the Sanskrit tablets and all the stuff. I mean, it's huge, and it's
If you could get India role playing, you'd make a killing just off like just making a game for that one country.
well, I know some of the people I went to school with were from southern India, and the way they would talk about people from northern India was almost like Yanks and Southerners here in the states. They had a bit of a rivalry, and it was kind of fun. Here's a bit of a note here. This blew my mind when I finally realized this. The reason that Gandhi is notable and everything that Gandhi did was because Churchill. So Gandhi was fighting Churchill in his youth, and then it wasn't until later Churchill was instrumental, of course, in England versus Germany and World War II kind of stuff. But um, Churchill was kind of a bastard, and Gandhi was fighting the British, and particularly Churchill. And it kind of reset that timeline for me too, because I thought Gandhi was way older in the timeline. Now he's much more contemporary.
I actually went the other way. I thought he was after Churchill. So, that shows you what American educational systems will do for you.
Yeah, I went to public school, so I don't know.
Yeah, like, hey, this guy existed. You're like, okay, what's the context? Existence. You're like, okay, and then you learn later. You're like, oh, that was like way more important than we were ever told it was.
Yeah. I get the details. It's just where in time they tend to, have actually happened that gets
Yeah.
confusing.
Some of the stuff that's really interesting from a historical perspective, when you get into the Asian continent, we've heard of the Silk Road, but you never really think about um, the Indian Pakistani cultures and the way that they mixed with some of the uh, Western Chinese kingdoms in the 12 Kingdoms area, and the way the unification of China affected its relationship with China and Pakistan and the sort of the Central Asian cultures. Um, so there's a lot to explore. It would be interesting to see someone bring that history, bring those cultures into a game that would make it accessible for different kinds of audiences.
Accessible and educational. It was just there's so much culture there.
Um, so Stunt is saying there are India-themed RPG products and supplements out there. Was actually just writing him a note asking if he had any specifics. Because I didn't know there were any at all, so that's very cool.
Well, they had a section in deities and demigods.
Yeah, the original actually was pretty good as far as it was almost like a gazetteer of world lore at a snapshot.
Yeah, that's true. It's also mentioned that the Aztecs and Incas, I think the Incas more than the Aztecs. The Aztecs, I think, have kind of a fascination with a lot of people, but the
Yeah, they're
Mayans
in
and the Incas.
Shadowrun.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things I was thinking of. The Mayans and the Incans kind of get left behind. Sort of interesting that we're so fascinated with certain specific cultures, and then others we completely ignore completely. Like
It
absolutely.
really is.
The lens of like Eurocentrism in the education has been kind of interesting because one of the things that I'm sure we can find pretty quickly is people trying to figure out how many countries there are in Africa, and just the history of Africa. Um, Huge trade nations,
Hmm.
lots and lots of wealth built in ancient Africa. And even now, the modern representations of Africa, we still see jungle peoples. I mean, they have businesses and skyscrapers, and they're fully it just depends on where you go in the
It's all the
continent,
people
which
that
country.
it's all the people that act like Africa's a single country that amuse me. I had totally forgotten about the Seventh Sea. Seven Seas, or I think they have some kind of Persian inspired stuff. This person said some Indian inspired lore, but
I've seen a lot of the ancient Egypt and sort of Persian stuff when you get into like sands and mummies and that sort of stuff.
hmm. All right. Do we have any other questions? We'll move over to the ghost with the most.
I'm just sitting here learning. I'm soaking up knowledge, so trying to
Well,
keep up with you guys.
It's now time for you to give us some knowledge.
Oh dear. Well, hmm, uh, do we want to move into cyberpunk?
I'm
Jack
all
me
for.
in.
I see what you
Done it
did
in real
there.
life.
Yeah,
Now, interestingly, I was so into Shadowrun, I did not do a whole ton of cyberpunk stuff, so this is going to be as interesting for me as for most people, I think.
well, I got into it in a strange way. Starting in junior high, for me, which would have been about 82. So when I started playing advanced D&D, and then actually the game that my friends really played a lot of was Villains and Vigilantes. And I don't know if many people are familiar with that. It was made by a smaller company that was local to us, and a superhero based role playing game. We played a lot of that. But as I got more into high school, I discovered William Gibson, and I was just absolutely enamored. I you know, burned through multiple copies of his books. So um, I was totally flabbergasted when the cyberpunk uh, game came out, and I believe it was 88 the first time I saw it, and I bought the Cyberpunk 2013 box set. Um, but then a weird twist of fate, I was about to leave for college, and I owned this amazing game, and I had no one to play it with because I'd left all my local gamer friends. Um, but it was kind of mind blowing to have something that fresh and different as a framework for role playing. So I was absolutely in love with it. Um, I know I sent you a couple pictures of the box set. I don't know if I
Yep,
can share
I'm
the screen.
working on getting them up. Here we go.
Yeah, it was just such a fresh new world. Yeah, that's the set there. With a very different style of artwork than we'd gotten used to from the old D&D, and um, I think it was around that time that Mondo 2000, the magazine, started up, and all of a sudden, we were all thinking we'd be in virtual reality by 2013 or something like that. And I have a television broadcasting studio on my kitchen table, but I don't have any 3D VR.
It's I had never actually really looked at it, but you're right. It's that cover is so minimalistic, it almost stands out just because of its simplicity.
Yeah, does anyone remember the artist Patrick Nagel? Very famous. He did a couple of Duran Duran's album covers, I think. Very big in the late '80s, and this artwork has that sort of a streamlined, um, weighted line to it. Because I was also studying illustration, and I was fascinated by it. I wish I could have dug out my original set. It's packed up in the garage somewhere.
Man, there was a lot of stuff in that box.
I think, yeah, you would have gotten. I think there are two or three. There's a basic manual. There's a couple other items. He may have some supplements in this photo. This is not mine. Um, yeah, I don't know. Just for me, I was hooked immediately, and I wish I'd been able to put in some more hours with like-minded people in college, but it just didn't work out that way.
This was what, 19? I'm trying to
It
see
would
the
have
date. What
been
my
okay. So originally, it was called 2013, and that came out in '88. And then 1990 was the newer, I guess, the second edition, which would
Mhm.
have been called Cyberpunk 2020. And then there was a third edition. I'm not sure what year it came out. A few years after that. It was a while, and did not go over very well.
Really?
Yeah, let's see if I can find some info on that.
They made some lore changes that didn't sit well with the community in that edition, and it
Yeah,
got largely brushed off.
yeah. This is before Red. Um, yeah, it's 2005 maybe, and then Red would have been much more recent. I think it was about 5 years ago.
Around the time that they launched the Cyberpunk 2077 video game.
And then it only took 2 years to get it to work right. That was a disaster. But yeah,
Yeah,
I actually watch a couple of our community members playing it pretty often now, and it seems like it's an excellent setup now.
yeah. CD Projekt Red had some issues on the launch, but it was interesting if you go back and read some of the um, it's not developer notes, but some of the game designer notes where R. Talsorian's team was working with CD Projekt Red to get it all right. They have some really neat articles on the Talsorian website.
Nice.
Tom, does this seem familiar? This is one of the Cyberpunk games that Tom did that apparently is still on the Atlas Games site.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, that does seem familiar.
You did 2 books for them?
Uh, uh, I did more than that. I did uh, Green War, the Chrome Berets, the Arasaka Brainworm. This was before we had people with actual brainworms, and I'm not sure if I did anything else, but I did at least those three.
What were sorry, I was going to look them up and see if they were still on the site. What were the other names again?
The Chrome Berets.
All I have to do is be able to spell. No, unfortunately, that one doesn't seem to be there.
I'm very surprised. And the Arasaka Brainworm. And Arasaka is Arasaka.
Oops. It gave me an option, and I went to click on it, and it downloaded something.
Well, I hope it's okay.
Congratulations, you've got your first virus from Cyberpunk.
Brainworm.
That is true. If if there's ever a time to get a virus, it's when you're looking at Cyberpunk.
Green War seems to be the one that's definitely still the most available.
Funny, I'm surprised the Chrome Berets is not.
I mean, they may be sold out. Who knows?
Yeah, I do not know the situation, but in any case,
This, as always, this is me in no way, shape, or form advocating for Amazon, but
you can find
there's
Brainworm on Amazon.
yeah, you can find brain worms on Amazon.
It's weird for me to see color artwork because everything was in black and white originally. It looks great.
Oh, thank you. I would. I'm disappointed that Chrome Berets is not around because Chrome Beret. Well, I, I would recommend Chrome Berets, and Green War too, and Arasaka Brainworm. But Chrome
It
Berets,
is out of stock. That is the reason that
that yeah, okay. So at least it hasn't disappeared
no, you can bring it up as a direct link, but when you go to search for it, it tries to only bring up products they actually have.
for obvious reasons.
So
Well, Chrome Berets, and Green War are they're adventures where I was trying to sort of do something new. I mean, we were talking with Ars Magica about new approaches to how you run a role playing game and scenarios that are different. And Chrome Berets and Green War were both attempts of mine to do something new in cyberpunk. Um, and Arasaka Brainworm is a straight cyberpunk adventure.
Hopefully, that gets reprinted soon.
Yeah, I hope so too.
are they still making new printings of these, or are they just
I
kind of
think
running?
so. I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly what Atlas Games' policy is, but there. I would assume that if a book is selling, that they'd print more of it.
I'll have
Well,
to take a look at some of that for drive through. You may be able to get them in PDF.
That is
yeah,
possible too.
Green War is still selling, so I would assume that can't still be a copy from whenever you wrote it.
I would assume the same.
It is kind of fascinating how much of this stuff is still around, though.
Yeah,
That's
and fascinating and pleasing.
yeah, fascinating for a bunch of reasons because now technically we're there. It was like when we hit 2019 and we were supposed to be living in Blade Runner. And the difference between all of the fiction and the reality is pretty interesting.
I love the cyberpunk genre. I think one of the most most fun quotes came out of Blood Dragon. Um, the year is 2008. It is the future. And then the music would play and stuff. You're like, what? And then, obviously the game was released after that, but it was like Miami Vice and Chrome and Neon. It was awesome.
Yeah, there was a lot more. There was a lot more neon sort of expected than we ended up with. Yeah, it reminds me of Escape from New York, which I go back and watch maybe once a year. And the year is 1997. Manhattan is now a maximum security prison.
Yeah, and then Escape from LA, the Los Angeles is broken off and it's its own island country of, it's all of that dystopian future stuff is just a lot of fun. And as a genre, really forces you to sort of reflect on different themes.
Um, I'm being told that Brainworm is available on drive-through as a PDF. Can you tell us how much it is for on drive-through, if you happen to be on that page still? This has turned into like a group research project.
Nothing wrong with that.
Everybody's gathering up links and information, passing it around. Hey, Dead Man Walking. Good to see you.
So,
And
Adam,
it is $4.95 as a PDF on Drive-Through RPG.
man,
So a really good way to start out with Cyberpunk You're one of those people who wants to try role playing with a system that isn't going to cost you $60 per book.
So Adam, I was going to remind you we were talking about some of the Cyberpunk 2020 stuff that you had experience with.
Hmm.
Um, so where did you go from there? Are you still doing Cyberpunk? Have you
Um,
looked into Red much? What are your thoughts on kind of where they're taking things?
I'll be honest. I kind of fell out of gaming for a long, long time. I'm
It's
dabbling.
okay. I'm fixing him.
Yeah, I'm dabbling a little bit with Goat right now. We did a first little trial run on Numenaria. But yeah, post 2020, I just went on to other things. I was at art school and became a tattooist for a long time, and went into theater and set construction and stuff, and never really got back to those roots.
Does Cyberpunk still influence a lot of some of your art or illustration styles? If you've got someone that comes in and wants a mechanical piece, do you kind of go back and look at that, or
Oh
you kind
yeah,
of
the genre, yes, has been a lifelong obsession. A little less gaming in my older years, but I you can't beat Ghost in the Shell. It took a long time for Hollywood to give us any really good cyber media. I mean, it wasn't really till The Matrix that we saw something that felt like a solid effort. And I have a soft spot for Johnny Mnemonic. I don't know if
oh
anyone else
yes.
watches it. Despite all its flaws, it's very charming, and it does get the aesthetic right. And
Mhm.
obviously, Blade Runner is huge. So yeah, it definitely influenced like biomechanical styles and tattooing, and a lot of H.R. Giger as well mixed in. But
Mhm. Yeah.
you can't beat cool cyborgs and robots as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, a
Absolutely.
lot of that, thinking ahead to the possibilities. I was looking at a list of movies coming out in 2025 and was really excited that there's a new, what would we do if robots gained sentience movie? And then I realized it was a comedy, and I was like, oh.
Which one is that? Is that the Mickey 17?
Uh,
No, it's not.
no, that one is definitely a comedy, but there's another one. I would have to look at Roman's list that he sent me.
Well, we'll see
Um,
it sooner or
but
later.
it's all of the comments were like, the book that this is based on was so like quiet and introspective and like deep, and this is an action movie with Chris Pine in it.
Oh, well,
But that's one of the things that's really kind of interesting when you get into cyberpunk and dystopian literature generally. It's oh come on, now I've lost the word, but it's really talking about the issues that you've got in your current society, and
yeah, allegories.
obviously,
Yeah,
right, you play them out to the extreme, um, and that's then you talk about it in a way that sort of grabs people, it's gripping, and that's where the self reflection. I think um, Blade Runner really did that quite well. The end monologue, in particular, was really good. But you'll see that too as you get deeper through media like Ghost in the Shell. The primary character is a full body replacement cyborg. She's essentially a brain in a box at this point.
yeah, and it
And
brings you to the ultimate question, which is what is identity? What is being human? If you start,
particularly at the end of the first film, she merges her consciousness with a hyper advanced AI and becomes something completely new altogether.
yeah, you would think that it would be kind of a cold, sterile thought bubble, but it really does bring up some of the fundamental philosophy that people have been grappling with for a long, long time.
Yeah, the whole transhumanism is meant to make you reflect on what it is to be human. And it's and that's where you I think find some of the better stories is in that common humanity, trying to hold on to it in the face of the extremes. Um, you
Agreed.
know, finding it again after having to sell it off or compromise it in certain ways for survival. Then you come back to it.
I think,
RoboCop actually,
yeah, same
it
there.
was he was died. Murphy died and was turned into a robot police officer. Rediscovering his humanity is the story of RoboCop.
Hmm.
And that was one of those things, early on, I watched the heck out of that as a kid. probably not kid appropriate, but it was the 80s, so
Uh,
Every
you know,
everything the kids watched in the 80s was kids inappropriate.
we were
well, you
lectured
know,
kids.
the
I mean,
movie only set the world record for most blood squibs used in a single film at the time until
right.
Rambo 2. But so it's like, but
I
that story made, was what connected to me. He was a machine. He had died, and for him to rediscover his humanity and reconcile that with his new existence in the face of a corrupt Detroit, those are
well,
the sort of stories you get out of cyberpunk.
yeah, his brain was just functioning as a processor at that point. It was
Hmm.
just being used for his skills as a just a big CPU at that point. And I think one of the things I like most about the genre is somebody like Gibson's talent for juxtaposing um, tribal gang groups, with super high tech brain interfaces and all that sort of thing. And he has a real flavor for creating humanity in those strange circumstances. I love the
Has anybody
juxtaposition in Blade Runner as well.
have any of you watched H plus, or has anyone in the chat watched H plus?
I have
It's
not.
a it's a YouTube series. I mean, it's basically a television series, but they're all like 10 minutes long. Um and it's really fascinating. It was done by Bryan Singer before, everybody decided they hated Bryan Singer. Um and you can watch it for free. And you can find it in two forms. You can find it in the way they originally put it out, and then but it jumps around in time, and so there's a simplified version where everything is in the chronological order. Um, but it's really fascinating. It's about a world where humans, and this is before, Elon Musk started talking about implanting, computers in our brains, but it's about a world where people were convinced to implant computers that would track all of their medical processes to try and deal with a doctor shortage.
Huh. I'm
Um,
looking it
and they
up
c-
right
and they convinced people to do this by saying, "Oh, you can also like listen to music and watch movies and watch television on your basically like directly in front of
Sounds
your
great,
brain."
doesn't it? Yeah, it sounds wonderful. What could possibly go wrong?
Um, and Then somebody hacks the system and they turn all of them off, except nobody's systems can actually function anymore without these computer chips. So unless you're in a dead zone or you're under the age where they could implant them, like everybody just shuts down and then eventually dies.
Oh yeah, they become system dependent, and their body slowly dies here. Um, that's insane. I want to answer this question real quick here. Stunt Gonzo asking about cyberpunk novels. This one might surprise you. It's kind of an interesting one. Not entirely cyberpunk, but you might feel that need. Check out the novel Heroes Die. So that's one that's kind of interesting. They take actors and upload them, and they basically kind of look transdimensional. Then they go into this fantasy world where they're somehow recorded, and that's TV. So there's some interesting mix of technology, corporatism, lack of humanity, particularly because the actors go and completely ruin this other society. It's a huge problem.
Sounds
But you also get elements, swordplay, magic, and mysticism. So Heroes Die is one that's was really well executed. The story is well paced, and I think it's going to have the kind of elements that you might be looking for. That's going to be different than your typical cyberpunk recommendation.
sounds. It reminds me a lot of Mona Lisa Overdrive, where an actual living person takes over another person who was a global pop star, whatever, in a virtual reality setting. Really interesting.
Okay, well, let's start wrapping up a little bit. I don't want to end up like last week where I get the 10-second warning and discover that we're shutting down like right now. So if we want to go around and everyone wants to talk about what they're doing, where they're going to be going, what they're publishing, anything else you want to push, Please feel free. Tom, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you. I am currently a novelist, and if you like or are interested in my games, I am pretty confident you'll like or be interested in my novels. Uh, right now, I have 5 novels out. I'm starting with the Mara of the League series, which begins with the Witches of Crannock Dale, and it follows the main character from childhood to her 40s. So if when you see that the first book is about a child, that does not mean it's a children's book. And what it is Mara is a smart little girl who sees what's going on around her, and when her aunt gets arrested for witchcraft, she starts asking questions that the grown-ups don't want her to ask. And she tries to save her aunt, and from trying to save her aunt, learns more about sort of the big scale politics of her world, and gets deeper and deeper in. And by the end of the book, she is heading her country's spy services, and you know try, trying to save her country from being invaded. So it develops into a political intrigue and military type of fantasy. So, Mara of the League, The Witches of Crannock Dale. It's available on audio if that appeals to you. It's also available. All 4 books are available as a single ebook. If you want to get them all at once. There is a standalone sequel to it called The People versus Abigail Bennett, which is about Mara's mother, who is a lawyer. And by the time The People versus Abigail Bennett takes place, Abigail, the mother, is 78 years old, and she thinks she's retired. But 2 teenagers get dragged up and accused, framed for murder, and so she comes out of retirement to try to, keep them from being executed. It's a fantasy legal thriller. So I hope you'll check some of those out, and I am working on a more fantasy set in a fantasy world graduate school, where a group of students who are working on their SDs, which is even above PhD. There and in the middle of their studies, their professor dies, and they have a new professor who takes over and changes the final exam they have to take in ways that might kill them. So here they are, trying to get to take the exam that they've studied for and have a chance of passing and a chance of surviving, and have planned. They're like almost 30 years old, and throughout their 20s, they've been working toward taking the old exam that doesn't exist, and they're trying to trying to get some kind of justice there. That that's the, it will be a 2-book series. The series title is Sleep of Reason. It's not out yet, but it's coming. And if you are interested in being updated on any of these things, or just hearing more from me, I have a newsletter, which I would be honored if you subscribe to, and you can sign up for it at thomasmkane.com.
I'll make sure that link goes into the description when I do the editing for the replay too. Is this the book that's coming out this summer
That's
that you
Sleep of Reason.
that you and I are going to chat about on my indie author conversation in, what was it, June? I think you're scheduled for.
June sounds right, and yes.
So we can talk about it more then, and hopefully
I
get
look
people
forward
links
to
to
it.
it then. All right, Jester.
All right. So once again, I am Jester Boris with I Want to Be a GM. Let me throw that up there. So we focus primarily on teaching people to play role-playing games. We have a big focus on storytelling. We work a lot with our local events. We've helped teachers put in programs at school. We run our once-a-month podcasts. So next year we're going to be talking about allies and enemies and what that means and how you can make them interesting and multidimensional. So we hope that you'll come check us out over on YouTube. Our Discord's been a little quiet recently, but we do have a Discord community over there where we can help you craft your game, or maybe help you find a game we're trying to expand some of our digital offerings. Also, we are opening a game store at one of the local suburbs around here. So that's where Troy's been at. He's been busy with that. We're gonna have a game store. We're gonna have cards and comics and role play and quite a lot going on actually with what we're up to. So I appreciate you having me on, and I would hope that if you are interested, you'll join some of the conversations we have over on our side of things. I want to be a GM.com, griffins.keep.us, 417 Games and Events is our local calendar we keep a hold of. 417 Games Sidekicks is a charity that I run, and that is a charity that supports accessibility in gaming. We work with getting people who don't necessarily get out. We pay their way to go to conventions, and we work with local conventions. So, just kind of advocate for the hobby generally. Would love to be able to help you out if you've got any questions. I don't know everything, but I've got a lot of experience, and I'd be glad to work on anything to help you have more fun. And whether it's cyberpunk, Dungeons and Dragons, Star Wars, we don't discriminate in that regard.
Somebody wanted to know what state your store is going to be in.
We're opening that store in Willard, Missouri. Oh yes, and then don't forget Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Shaka when the walls fell. So
All right, and Adam.
I am pretty much just a YouTube guy these days. Our address is at B-Roll Stage on pretty much every platform there is. We have Twitch, Rumble, YouTube. Every Friday, we host a live riffing show where we will have a panel of very funny people give the MST3K style treatment to an old schlocky film. It's a lot of fun. We've got a great dedicated audience. A lot of them are in the chat tonight. Nice to see you guys. So that's
When you
every
were
Friday.
tired, when you were tired of role playing and want to watch a terrible, terrible movie.
Yeah, call it a palate cleanser. We do just try to have a great time and amuse ourselves, and people seem to be enjoying it. Every other Wednesday, I can be found on the Total Recall channel, which has a really great premise. We select movies generally from our childhood that we can't remember if we really would like them anymore or not, and we rewatch them to see if they hold up over time or if they're maybe just a product of their time. It's a really fun premise. I'm not selling it very well, but this next episode we're going to watch Bugsy Malone, the Scott Baio film with the child gangsters from the late 70s. We watched the Coneheads on the last episode and Ringo Starr's Caveman. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely check out Total Recall. And I'm doing a couple of guest spots here and there in the next couple of weeks. I'll be on Jacob Ironside's channel. We're going to be reviewing a couple of X-Files episodes.
Oh, you're the person who got the spot I wanted.
I think we're still fighting over Humbug. I think, yeah. So I am around, and thankfully our super mod Eraserhead is in the chat, posting the links. So yeah, please stop by.
Eraserhood is the bomb.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's tireless. So thank you, Eraserhead, and pleasure to meet you, Tom and Jester. It's been excellent chatting with you. So thank you, guys.
The very same. I'm delighted to meet all of you, and very honored to be here.
absolutely,
All
I
right.
appreciate being able to participate.
I guess that leaves me. I am on Roman of the Empire's free range show tomorrow, chickens and all. We are apparently talking about the upcoming 2025 movies and a ridiculous number of other homework articles I haven't read yet. I am finally nearing the end of my Green Mile hashtag the book is better video. This has taken me forever because it turns out that the book and the movie are actually really, really close, and I had a very hard time making decisions. I actually have made a new outro video to go with my The Book is Better videos. I released that as a standalone. It's about 2 minutes long on my channel today. I also, a few weeks ago, released a clip I did for the Uninspired Hour on the history of the ghosts from the 13 Ghosts, so that's still up. And once the Green Mile has been released, I am going to finish off the second half of my um, underappreciated 90s television sci fi shows. I did Aliens, and I'm going to do Technology next, so those will be up. And I will be also, let's see if I can get this straight. So I am here every Wednesday at 6 o'clock for Slice and Dice. The first Monday of every month, I do indie author interviews. And then the second and fourth Monday of every month, I will be starting a new show called Shows You've Never Seen, where I'm going to take a slightly deeper dive into my underappreciated 90s shows by watching them with people who are too young to have actually seen good 90s television.
I was going to ask if I could be on, but I guess I'm disqualified.
um, just so they, well, I got thinking about it, and, I hear a lot of complaints about, hey, every time you talk about how the 90s television was better, you always name exactly the same things. So it's
Mm.
like, all right, we're going to go after the shows that got canceled in one season. These were the bad shows in the 90s. These were the shows that didn't make it, and they're still better than most of what's coming out now. So I think we are probably going to start with either Carnival or Daybreak. Daybreak is actually an early 2000s show, but it's basically a cop drama combined with Groundhog's Day. So there's some debate as to
Carnival was fantastic. I missed
yeah,
that show.
yeah. Both of them are actually early 2000s. I thought we'd start off a little weird and a little slow for, not dump people straight into the 90s. So, um, yes, Eraserhead is actually going to be on this. I think this is going to be his first regular live stream show ever. He's
Perfect.
always a mod, never a live streamer. So this gets
Yeah.
this is his first chance to get out from behind the chat. So
Let's get his feet wet.
hello, Cow of Fire. We are actually just getting done, but we are delighted to see you for the few minutes that you could get here. So I believe that is everything. I hope that everyone had a great time. I was really, really happy to see so many new people.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to my guests because I'm sure you're the reason that they got here. And I hope to see you all back next week. And I hope very much that you will consider subscribing and like, if nothing else.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a great night.
Good night.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it, or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. We're the guys for you, we've got time for you. Come and join the crew, here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.